Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Championship Showcase, Secrets for Success from the playing field of competition to the field of life. We are speaking with inspirational sports leaders, former athletes, coaches, administrators, sports psychologists, and related professionals who are sharing their life strategies and empowering messages of hope and purpose to support those athletes that are seeking to make a successful transition from the playing field of competition to the field of life. My name is Dominic Militello, and we're so glad you could join us. We're fortunate to have another fantastic guest with us on the Championship Showcase, so let's jump right in. Today we're speaking with Bob Palmer. Bob is CEO of Sport Excel and the Sport Excel system, which passionately ignites, transforms, and empowers individuals through the experience of a proven system for business, sport, athletic leadership. He's a high-performance expert, NLP master practitioner, author, and fourth-degree black belt in karate. Since 1994, Bob has been creating innovative ways to help athletes, coaches, and sports leaders achieve their dreams. Working in over 30 different sports on 6 continents and all age and athletic levels, Bob's system has been embraced by a wide range of sports, including the clay target sports, surfing, snowboarding, figure skating, triathlon, and golf, as well as the team sports of football, hockey, and baseball, soccer. His system has ignited the passion, joy, and skillfulness of thousands of athletes, many of which have achieved podium success in the Olympic, Commonwealth, Pan Am, and X Games, as well as many developmental and collegiate sports. With 20 years of experience under his belt, Bob can shift almost any athlete's performance to the zone in less than 2 hours for extraordinary results. Even athletes reading his book send Bob emails detailing the system works as a result of simply following the steps. We're very fortunate to have Bob Palmer with us today. Bob, welcome to the showcase.
Thank you, sir. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, we know you're very busy and appreciate you taking the time to spend with us today. For those out there who may not be as familiar with you as we are, Bob, can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing and your background?
Well, I grew up in Ontario, Canada, Southern Ontario at the time, and pretty much everything in Canada at that time was hockey. I mean, it's branched out into many other sports by now, but at that time, if you didn't play hockey, you probably didn't play sports. And I played at the competitive rep level and enjoyed it, but it was always something that I never really was able to go beyond. It was, I had, I guess, what I would call blocks at the time, and that's probably why I'm in the business I'm in right now.
Well, great. And talking about, obviously, hockey's predominant in Canada, but what were some of the lessons that you learned growing up as an athlete? Maybe not achieving the highest levels that you talked about, but certainly having a competitive mindset. What were some of the things that sport taught you as a young man growing up?
Well, it taught me that there was a life beyond kind of my family circle where things weren't always spectacular. I had one person ask me, how I got into high performance, and I had to say, and probably in cruder terms, but I was pretty screwed up at the time. and sports always gave me that out. I could be totally messed up, and I could go play hockey, and the world was forgotten in those moments I was on the ice. And I always kind of wondered about that. And there were times even when I played that I had these moments of brilliance, I call them, and they were fleeting. But they were like these nuggets of gold that I just had to have, and I had to get it back as much as possible. And that set me off on a journey to figure it out.
Well, nuggets of gold, that's a pretty powerful statement. As a matter of fact, before we get too much further, I just wanted to ask you, have you seen the latest cover of Sports Illustrated with Michael Phelps on the cover?
I have not, but I'm familiar with what the article is about.
Yeah, well, on the cover, he is quoted saying, I was in a really dark place, not wanting to be alive anymore. Here's one of the most decorated Olympians of all time saying that he doesn't want to be alive anymore at one of the darkest places in his transition. What do you make of that?
I have athletes who I prevent them from going into that mode, and the way I do that is I help them to build a foundation when they are athletes. I always feel it's way too late to be thinking about transitioning when you really are at that edge where you still want to compete, but you got to transition, and it's kind of the end of the world when you do that. You don't even want to get into that thought process. It's, if you think of other areas, going from, say, high school into college, you don't think of a transition, you just do it. Or going from college into the workplace, you don't think of it as a transition necessarily, you just do it because you've built a foundation to get there. And
right. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'd much rather see these athletes building a foundation within their sport that enables them to do anything afterwards.
Wow, and that's a pretty powerful statement right there, because most athletes, I think, are so focused on becoming the best athlete in their particular sport that they can be, and everything is focused towards training, eating properly, getting the right mindset for performance, excellent performance like what you do, and that somehow has got to translate, from what I'm hearing you say, is if they're doing those things properly, you can incorporate what comes next, and it's almost a natural next step for them.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, they've got to be thinking when they're going through that. I mean, sports is everything for them. They are the product. But in order to be the product, they should also immerse themselves in, okay, I got to be the chief marketer here and keep tabs on, what my agent is doing. And I've got to be, I've got to be looking after professional development. And they've got all these streams, these areas of their business, as I would call it, that they need to be aware of in finances and investments. And if they're aware of them and they can build their brand as a business person, as a competitive athlete, then there is no transition out after they retire and move on to the next level or next part in their lives, simply because they've now got the foundation for that.
Right, and you've built a system for that. We'll talk about that in just a second. But you said something earlier that kind of caught my attention. There was nuggets of gold there for you, where outside of sports you were maybe a little bit all over the place, or however you want to determine it. Do you find that most athletes are either driven towards something or running away from something?
Oh, I would think that they're driven towards something. They're driven toward, pleasure, winning, and doing the best their bodies can deliver in a game. But it is about the win, and that is a wonderful sensation that athletes feel all the time. But they should be getting into that even in training. And so my experience and my findings, if you will, with all my clients are that if you get that sense of well-being in every training session, then it's a natural process where you deliver it in your competition. And I call it the zone. Other people call it flow or whatever. But what I've discovered is that's a normal way. That's a skill set that athletes can deliver time and again if they know what it is. And so I've taken that nugget of gold and I figured out what the mother lode is. How do you get into it every single time? And that enhances any athletic performance 100-fold.
Well, we're going to talk about your system here in just a second. I have a question, though. As a 4th degree black belt, did that process start early in your life, or did it come a little bit later? And how has that helped you develop some of what you have created in your system?
It started when I was about 18. I think the various television series were running kung fu and that kind of thing, and it piqued my imagination. And I started karate about that time and had some very good instructors. And so after I got my college degree and I moved on, became a teacher, and I was just totally stressed out by the whole process. And married with kids, I started back into the martial arts and got into a club that was just more competitive than I've ever experienced in any of my sports. So with some of the best point karate practitioners in North America. And I know it was an eye-opener. And my intent was to get in and just get healthy and be physical and fit, and kind of got caught up in the competitive stuff again and absolutely enjoyed it. But that's where that nugget of gold came in. I wasn't experiencing it. And so I was striving then to go, okay, I've got great mentors, role models. I've got a great model of a sport to do this in. So it became my laboratory, if you will. And I started playing some of the system approach that I had learned in college versus a psychology approach, which I found, it's a different model. It didn't work for me, but a systems approach did. So I started putting the systems approach together, and bingo, I was able to get well, not bingo, it took a lot of work and a lot of luck in many ways, but I got my black belt, I won a major competition, I learned how to get into the zone on demand, and that allowed me this transition. If I hadn't joined karate that second time, I don't think I ever would have discovered what I've discovered.
It's amazing the things that help, the moments in life that you don't realize it at the time, but when you look back, say, oh man, that was a defining moment in my life. You talked a minute ago about mentors and role models. Who were some of your mentors and role models, and what were some of the key lessons they taught you?
I had, the top guy, our sensei, 8th degree black belt, Sensei Shintani. He was just had this way about himself. I mean, to put one attribute toward him would be impossible. It's just the way he held himself, the way he taught, the way he was able to motivate a group of young people in the dojo, and whereas my other instructors would, I liked them, I liked their approach, and they got us. I guess they got us to a certain level of competency. But when the master stepped on the floor, it was unbelievable. I always used to scratch my head and go, were we just trying to show off for him, or did he actually do this, get us into that zone? And so I was able then to kind of step back when I was developing the system and go, okay, what was he doing there? How was he managing that? And so that helped me to start applying some of the tools to a leadership model and copying some of the things he did. And I also had one karate instructor who was probably, he could have been playing professional hockey. He was such a good athlete. He's kind of screwed up his shoulder and decided to take the karate route instead. But he was, he talked to me at times about kind of a feedback loop. He'd go to a competition and he'd lose. And he said, Bob, when I came back from that competition, I would take the technique that beat me and I'd work it over and over until I knew it better than the guy who beat me. And
wow.
If you compile that, one competition top on another, and think about that ongoing learning that he did, he became quite unbeatable at times in his career. And it was beautiful to watch, but it was also fantastic for me in that dojo to model it.
Well, it sounds like you had plenty of working ground to start gathering the information that became your system. Was there a moment, or was there a defining time, or can you think back and think where you said, listen, this is the direction I want to go. Was there a moment or an event that happened where you said, I want to get into the high performance industry?
I think your comment earlier about were you moving towards something or moving away from something, I knew at some point that I didn't want to be a school teacher. But I did love educating, and I did love the high performance model. And I think that was probably when I made the decision to create a business and actually put a web page out there. Then that was probably my defining moment that I realized that there was a gap here, that everyone was talking about the zone as being kind of mystical and airy-fairy, and you have to be a great athlete in order to be able to get into it. And I don't like when people say things like that. They're kind of fighting words. I always want to prove them wrong, and I want to prove that no, this is a skill set. This is something that you can get in all the time. And I think that was probably when I made the decision. And has it been an easy road? Absolutely not, but it's been fun.
Well, as you started building your business, did you reach out? Did you find a support team? Did you start interviewing people? What did you do to start building your business?
Initially, I mean, because I was a karate instructor, I had quite a group, quite a community that I could kind of reach out to and say, hey, do you want to try this? Do you want to try that? And I did a lot of experimentation with my model, before I even put it out there as a business. And even when it was a business, I did a lot of freebies and a lot of requests for people to try it out and to just give me some, testimonials on it if it worked for them. And slowly but surely, it just was evident that this was, quite an effective model. And it just kind of developed from that.
You're listening to the Championship Showcase, Secrets for Success from the Playing Field of Competition to the Field of Life. We're speaking with Bob Palmer, CEO of Sport Excel. Bob, talk to us a little bit about the mindset of an athlete and even a business owner, and how having the right mindset can impact an athlete or a business owner positively or negatively.
Well, the neat thing about, and we talk about athletes moving into a business realm or seeing themselves as business people, as athletes, and moving and taking that foundation beyond, athletes are in a very special position because they already have a mindset, especially at the very highest levels, about how to deal with adversity, for example, how to recover from a loss or an injury, or lead their teammates when everyone else is down. So these are all attributes that have relevance to a corporate model or to a business model. They're situated in a position where I think employers want them. And sometimes athletes just don't understand that. They don't know that. They think they've been putting all their time, into a sport like swimming, and it's all wasted. But think of the perseverance, and believe me, when you get into business and it ain't going the way you want it to go, you need some of that stuff. And I think that's the side of it where karate helped me as well. I had these models. The top sensei. I mean, he came through the internment camps in World War II. And talked about, at times about, the conditions and the TB, and I mean, it was a hard time for them, but it built who he was. And I believe sports gives you that. Sports gives you that foundation. I think you just have to be able to understand that at the time you're doing the sport, you can utilize that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with you on that. Tell us a little bit about Sport Excel and your system, and what you do for athletes to get them to achieve their highest performance, if you will.
Well, most athletes, even developmental athletes, have had a moment of brilliance. I mean, there's this sort of a lot of people talking, well, you have to set your goals, and you have to do this, and you have to be confident, you have to have self-talk and all that kind of stuff. And people will go off and do it, and I did it as a young athlete, and my experiences of being in the zone just happened. And so when I was setting up the system, I said, well, what just happened? So I started playing around with notions of the zone and notions of utilizing adrenaline and wiring myself up, and stumbled onto the notion that the zone is the prerequisite. It's not just a mythological mindset. This is a prerequisite, and you can and must get into it at the outset. So that's when I had developed that, then, and was able to get athletes into that zone. Then it became one. Well, what support is required to keep them there? What about the goal piece? And that kind of fitted in next, and allowed me to say, okay, well, write down your goals. Yeah, but I've done that, and I still go to sleep at a competition, and I had to figure out how to process goals so that they worked for me, and that they're always running subconsciously, and they help create that zone or create that adrenaline. The next step was simply how do you deal with adversity, and it really became one of, well, the computer industry understands it. They build programs, kids fail at all the time, but kids love it. Why do they love it? Well, they've got a reset button. They press that reset button, they're back in the game, and so that is essentially what the third step is creating that reset button, understanding that everything requires a reset. And then step 4 is really, what are the tools that will allow you to do that reset without having to talk about stuff and without having to get these self-talk loops going in your head that just screw you up even more. So it becomes one of getting the tool set that allow athletes to maintain their adrenaline, to deal with people that are intimidating them or trying to throw them off. And then the 5th step is simply, the more you utilize those tools to get back to the zone, the brain kind of wakes up and goes, oh, you're trying to tell me something here, guy. And the brain kind of says, well, I can do that for you. So you create a habit. And once you create that habit of staying in the zone, it's applicable. My athletes have, come back. I mean, if I really want to find out how well my athlete's doing, I ask them how school's going. If school's going well, I know their game's going well, because you can't, once you learn that zone and learn how to stay in it, you really, there's nothing like it, and it's not containable. It's going to expand in your sport, in your business, as a business athlete, seeing themselves as business people, and looking after all the needs within that, marketing and self-promotion type of thing. And then the last step is simply, it's about you. Athletes have to do it. I can teach them this system. I can teach them the tools, but the athlete has to go away with it and start practicing it and ensure they stay in the zone and keep getting it back and overcome adversity and have some fun with it. Because once you learn it, there is no going back. You just cross the line and your sport can be fun again.
Wow, great stuff there. What comes to mind when you're talking about these 6 steps and the success, and I know you've worked with many athletes, Olympians and whatnot, but the question in my mind comes up and that is asking, well, what's the difference between those that excel that you work with and those that maybe don't reach that place of excellence? What would you say the difference is between the two, the athlete that does achieve what their goals are and the athlete that doesn't?
It really comes down to how much they work the system. If they, if I teach them the system and they know it and they go away and I know everything, I can almost guarantee that they're probably not going to do well. It's those athletes who are constantly using it and coming back and saying, hey, Bob, this is working, that's working. I fell out. How do I get back in the zone here? And then sometimes it's 5 or 10 minutes to get them back in the zone, and they go, darn, I missed that. And then they're off the races again. And it's constant work on it, constant work on your zone and finding out what pulls you out. Because, athletes initially have those moments of brilliance. Well, even the pros I work with, they now have their zone very consistently, but they have their moments of disaster. So it becomes one of the whole model shifts now, because their whole game has gone to a new level. But it's not to say that there aren't changes. Not to say that they haven't incurred an injury they have to recover from, or they've their kid has ADHD, or their spouse isn't happy, or these are things that evolve. Life evolves. And a lot of my athletes, we get together. It's not even about their game anymore. It's about what happens off the ice or off the hill, or you name it. It's that other stuff that is pulling their attention from their game.
Right. And it's interesting because not at any point in your description of your steps or of some of the questions I've asked you have you talked about winning. And so far, it doesn't sound to me like what you're talking about is winning, but it's the steps that an athlete goes through in preparation and in the moment that helps them achieve their success. You mentioned a minute ago about an athlete who took all the stuff that he learned in defeat to help him achieve his goals. Talk about it not being about winning, but about all the other things that go into it.
Well, first of all, for me, and for most athletes, it is all about winning. But the foundation that creates the winning is is what I guess what you're talking about here. All the things that have to be put in place to get that win. But by and large, with my athletes, if they come to me and they just want to get better, or they want to develop their skills, or they want to be more consistent, I know it's what they've been told they should tell me, but I know deep down they have the reason they're doing sport is for another reason, and that is they want to win. And so once we get that out of the way, and okay, it's okay to say you want to win, it's okay. It's much easier then to go, okay, how do we support that win? So, but I just asked them, you stay in the zone. I mean, I worked with a baseball team, and I asked them, I said, and I had a figure in the back of my head for how much of the time they were in the zone, and which was, I thought they would say 30, 40, 50%, 15% before I worked with them. I said, man, I could choose a 30%. I've got a 100% success rate here. But so I say to athletes, if you stay in the zone 100% of the time, how much are you going to win? And they go, Bob, I'll be invincible. And pretty much, they get in that zone. No one can throw them off their game. They just keep coming back and keep coming back. And it's a pretty amazing process to watch.
Great stuff. Great information there, Bob. Talk to us a little bit about how your system can help those athletes that are transitioning now. So we've touched on it a little bit, but go into a little more depth, if you will, about the system and applying it to life after sport.
Okay, so there's a number of areas. I mean, I encourage athletes to build the foundation. So let's say we got an athlete who's now out of sport and they're in a process of transitioning into life and they're lost. Well, I mean, if you take the same things they learned in sports and apply them to this next journey they're on, then okay, let's start from the vantage point of being in the zone. They're not 6 years old anymore starting a sport. They're maybe 26 or 36. I don't know, whatever age they retire in their particular sport. But they now, the zone is a starting point. So they don't want to go there. Michael Phelps certainly can't go there in his mind because he's depressed. But all one has to do is say, okay, Michael, think about the Olympics and go back to that time, and his whole physiology will change. His eyes light up. He thinks about that time. Okay, now, Michael, let's bring that physiology to the role of businessman. And let's start applying that zone to what you got to do now. Maybe you don't even know what you want to do now, but now you can, from the vantage point of being in the zone, the world looks a little brighter. And the opportunities start to pop up. And then you go, okay, Michael, okay, now you got an idea of what you want to do. Let's apply that one to your goal. But let's make it bright, and let's make it brilliant, and let's make it so attractive that you're drawn to it. And then it's simply a matter of going through the system of okay, now it's not happening. How can we take that information, plug it back in using some of the tools so that it enables you to just keep generating this optimism and you're keep connected to that outcome at the end. And it's pretty amazing when you see athletes do that, because I've had a number of people who were deeply depressed I was working with, and once they learned how to access that zone and to influence the people around them rather than being influenced by the people around them, it was a game changer.
Well, you talk about having people around you. How important is it for athletes to have a support group that they can trust, that they can turn to as they go through this transition?
I guess there's two sides to that coin. Sometimes there are some so-called support groups that are kind of pity parties, and I don't buy into those unless you've got somebody who's facilitating that is upbeat and is able to get people out of that kind of stuff. What I prefer is for athletes to maybe find a business leader that they can shadow and sit in on meetings and watch them, watch how they perform and watch how they deal with people. And you know, many business people are willing to do that and act as mentors to them. So my preference is that they get a good core of people around them who are productive, who are excited by living, are moving on, or are in other areas that are not in sports, not sports specific. So it never deteriorates into poor me. It is always, well, here's how I do things. Here are some strategies. Let's just immerse ourselves in this new role of business person and see what we can create.
Great stuff. Excellent. A couple last questions. We're almost out of time, but as somebody who's been in this space for a long time, and it sounds like you're continually creating and being innovative, what do you see your role as a leader, and what is your legacy that you want to leave for others?
What is my role? I always see myself bringing someone from level A up to the stratosphere, right? I'm always moving people from one level to the next, and I mean, there's no better experience for me working with a young athlete as when they see the light and they understand what the zone is and they just light up and they run with it. So I'm always a mentor. I'm always having fun, because I mean, I'll get business people who I work with. I also work on quite a bit in business, and I'll see somebody who just looks like death warmed over. And because I know the outcome of what he's going to look like in 2 months, it's really exciting for me. And so I have to kind of contain myself just a little bit so I don't sound like I'm mocking them or anything. But I know by the end of that 2 months what they're going to look like. And sure enough, they're excited, and they're now taking their business to the next level, because now they're exciting their staff. They're influencing them the same way that I influence the business leader. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how I see my role. Everything I do, and I learned how to do this as a karate instructor, copying my mentors and my role models, and I see myself just continuing with that process.
Excellent. One last question, and then we'll have to close out here. But knowing what you know now about life and sport, if you came across an athlete that either was about to go through their transition or was in it, or you knew maybe that they were struggling a little bit, what would you say to them in just real short? Any advice or things that they could probably do immediately with knowing what you know now that would help them at whatever stage they were in their process?
I would say go back to some of your highlights in your career prior to the transitioning part, and think about some of the moments of glory. Now, you can't bring moments of glory to the future, but you can bring the feel of those moments of glory to the future. And I essentially, I call that the zone. I call that your ability to identify it with how you feel. And that's the first thing I take anyone through when I start the program. But I think it's for anyone who's listening, they might just, go away for a short vacation and start thinking about that. Make a list of their successes, but start to feel what they felt like then. And then apply that feeling to everything they do moving forward.
Wow. Great stuff. Those moments of brilliance you're talking about. Well, everyone, we certainly hope you've enjoyed our conversation with the incredible Bob Palmer. I know I have. You've been listening to the Championship Showcase, Secrets for Success from the playing field of competition, the field of life. Bob, any last comments that you'd like to leave our listeners before we officially sign off?
I guess I would just like to thank you. I really enjoyed speaking with you and being able to get this information out there. You've just done a great job of interviewing me and got me in the zone. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Bob. Thanks for joining us. And we encourage those of you who feel you might need some assistance through your career transition, please get the necessary help you need. You have purpose and you have value. For now, for Bob Palmer, this is Dominic Militello. We want to wish you all the best always. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon.